After months of blaming me for not getting pregnant, my husband reunited with his ex during a business trip. Now he's desperate to save our marriage. I never imagined at 32 that I'd be restarting my life, not after believing James, 35, and I had built something unbreakable during our 3 years of marriage. We'd been trying to start a family for almost a year without success, a journey that gradually exposed cracks in what I thought was solid ground. We both worked at the same consulting firm in Portland, though in different departments. The shared dream of parenthood had been central to our relationship since we first met at a corporate retreat in Denver. After our wedding, we didn't waste time before attempting to conceive, both excited about building our family together. The monthly disappointments weighed on me, but I tried to remain positive. James, however, couldn't hide his frustration. Each negative test resulted in days of silent treatment as he processed, leaving me drowning in guilt for something beyond my control. After 8 months of this pattern, I suggested we seek medical advice. "We don't need to waste money on specialists," he insisted. "We just need to keep trying." So we continued our cycle of hope and disappointment, with his reaction growing progressively worse. Last month, following another negative test, I again proposed medical intervention. James snapped, "I already know who has the problem here, but I've been trying to spare your feelings." His words cut deep. There was absolutely no basis for his assumption that I was the one with fertility issues. When I pointed this out, along with the unfairness of his monthly blame rituals, he claimed to know for certain it wasn't him. What followed shocked me to my core. "Either you fix this, or we need to go our separate ways. I want children, and if you can't provide that, what's the point of this marriage?" His ultimatum revealed that I was merely a means to an end, a potential mother to his children, not a partner he valued, regardless of circumstances. I retreated into silence, waiting for an apology that never materialized. 3 days later, he departed for a 2-week conference in Seattle without so much as a goodbye. The only indication of his whereabouts was his entry in our shared digital calendar, our standard practice whenever either of us traveled. I tried to carry on with my life, focusing on my work projects and meeting friends. On the 3rd day of his absence, while scrolling through Instagram, I spotted a post from Vanessa, his college girlfriend. The luxury hotel balcony she was posing on looked strikingly familiar. Following my instinct, I compared it to the hotel where James was supposedly staying. They matched perfectly. I called the hotel reception and asked to be connected to her room. When her voice answered, I hung up immediately, my stomach churning with the undeniable truth. James was with her. Vanessa and James had dated for 2 years before breaking up shortly before graduation. They maintained a friendship afterward, and she had even attended our wedding. I'd found their continued connection somewhat strange, but James had assured me it was completely platonic. They primarily met in group settings with college friends, and she traveled extensively for her photography career, so their one-on-one interactions were supposedly minimal. As I processed this betrayal, I noticed the conference details had mysteriously disappeared from our shared calendar, but not before I'd taken my customary screenshot of his travel plans. I contacted my friend Elena, who had recently navigated her own divorce, and asked her to connect me with her attorney. By the next morning, I had a consultation scheduled. I explained my situation and requested divorce papers be prepared immediately. I also made an appointment at a fertility clinic. The nagging suspicion that James was projecting his own issues onto me deserved investigation. Within a week, I had filed for divorce citing infidelity and received my test results, which confirmed what I had suspected. I had no fertility issues whatsoever. The problem had never been mine. I kept myself meticulously busy during James's absence, reorganizing my financial accounts, securing temporary housing with Elena, and preparing to confront him with evidence of his betrayal. My focus on these practical matters left little time for emotional breakdown, though I knew that would come later. When James finally returned, he attempted casual conversation, even apologizing for our pre-trip argument and suggesting we look into fertility treatments. I interrupted his performance by asking directly where he'd stayed during his conference. He fumbled, claiming he couldn't recall the hotel's name. When I mentioned seeing Vanessa's Instagram post from the exact location, he initially denied any meeting. After several minutes of tense silence, he admitted they had met, but insisted he hadn't mentioned it to avoid making me insecure. I pressed for the complete truth. Eventually, he confessed to sleeping with Vanessa, framing it as an act of frustration rather than betrayal. He explained that he had contacted her to confirm whether his fertility issues predated our relationship, recalling an unplanned pregnancy during their college relationship. According to him, Vanessa had revealed that she had been unfaithful to him during that time, so the pregnancy might not have been his after all. James claimed he'd planned to return home after this discussion, but Vanessa convinced him to stay. In his moment of weakness, they became intimate. He later discovered through testing at a Seattle clinic that he was indeed the one with fertility issues, not me. To compound his humiliation, Vanessa left after 5 days and blocked his number, apparently using him for a brief fling rather than the emotional reconnection he'd hoped for. Throughout this confession, his tone remained strangely calm, as if explaining a minor scheduling conflict rather than the systematic dismantling of our marriage. He concluded by saying he was willing to give our marriage one last chance, as though the decision were his to make. I couldn't help but laugh before handing him the divorce papers and my fertility test results. His expression shifted from confidence to panic as he scanned the documents. "This isn't necessary," he insisted. "We can work through this." I had already packed my essentials. As I walked toward the door, he fell to his knees, begging for forgiveness. I left him crying in our driveway, driving straight to Elena's apartment in the suburbs, where he wouldn't find me. For 3 days, I ignored his constant messages. Then his mother called, hysterical about her son's mental state. She claimed he was sobbing uncontrollably and making concerning statements about seeing no point in going on now that he knew he could never have the family he'd always wanted. Her transparent attempt to manipulate me into returning only fueled my resolve. I told her bluntly that her son had cheated, and whatever he chose to do now was his own responsibility. I hung up before she could respond. An hour later, James texted that he was feeling better, but found my reaction to his breakdown heartless, suggesting I had never truly loved him. He wanted me to understand that he was suffering too because of his infertility diagnosis and deserved kindness despite his actions. I returned to our house once to retrieve a valuable bracelet my father had given me. James greeted me enthusiastically, attempting to embrace me despite my obvious discomfort. When I pushed him away, he positioned himself in the bedroom doorway, physically preventing my exit while insisting I give him one more chance to prove himself as a good husband. To escape the situation, I falsely promised to consider reconciliation. This seemed to satisfy him enough to let me leave. My attorney and I proceeded with divorce preparations. With solid evidence of infidelity and my husband's increasingly erratic behavior, we anticipated a straightforward process. When I finally responded to one of his messages, telling him to secure legal representation because my decision was final, he seemed genuinely shocked. To my relief, he ultimately decided not to contest the divorce. His mother, however, called my parents to berate them for raising a daughter who had no sense of duty toward her husband and couldn't forgive one tiny mistake. My parents, thankfully, defended my decision and reminded her that her son's actions were the true failure. As negotiations for settlement began, I finally allowed myself to feel the full spectrum of emotions I'd been suppressing. The grief, anger, and eventual relief washed over me in waves. I'd lost a marriage, but regained my self-respect. This experience taught me that real strength comes not from enduring mistreatment, but from refusing to accept it. Sometimes walking away isn't failure. It's the first step toward healing. I don't know what the future holds, but I know it will be built on respect, honesty, and genuine partnership, nothing less. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. Your support helps us continue bringing you engaging content.